Hello, happy Sunday, and welcome back, and happy late Halloween, since if everything goes to plan, this video is going up the day after Halloween. And happy early election day if you're in the United States, because that is coming up on Tuesday as of the day this video is going up. Please go out and vote, and we will talk about that a little bit more at the end of this video. Now, normally Sundays are Serpent Sundays where we talk about our noodly friends, but today is going to be a little bit different because I have been very stressed out all week due to an upcoming exam where we're being proctored through a very invasive programs, and I am very uncomfortable with a lot of that, but oh well, I can't just not take my effing midterm, so that's a thing. But last night while I was scrolling through Twitter, I happened upon a couple of articles that broke yesterday that I would like to talk about a little bit. The first one we will read together since it's fairly short and I'll go a little more in depth in it. The other one, I am going to make a video just on that topic, but again, because midterm, later today as of the day this video is being filmed on Friday. So doesn't exactly give me time to put together a very in-depth outline when I have an exam that I'm not stressed about the content of the exam, just the fact that ProctorU can pretty much kick you out of your exam at any time they want for arbitrary effing rules. So without further ado, I'm gonna sit here and sip my latte like the liberal snowflake I am, and we're gonna talk about some shit. All right, so the first article we're gonna talk about that we're gonna go a little bit more in depth on is from Smithsonian Magazine, and the article is linked in the description down below because I would like you to be able to go back and read it yourself if you would like. And it's entitled, "The Tongass National Forest Loses Restrictions on Logging and Road Development." And we're going to talk about what the hell that means. But first, let's read the meat of this article. More than half of Alaska's Tongass National Forest is roadless, undeveloped wilderness. Since 2001, the forest has been protected under the roadless rule. But today, the United States Department of Agriculture announced it would exempt Tongass National Forest from those protections and open new areas to logging. Becky Brother reports for the Associated Press. So before we move on here, the roadless rule essentially means that if there's already no roads in these wilderness areas, they can't be developed. It's a little more nuanced than that, but that's the quick and dirty what that means. Tongass is the United States' largest national forest and the world's largest temperate rainforest. Coral Davenport reports for the New York Times. So while I'm sure we're all very familiar with the idea of a tropical rainforest, like the ones down in South America, notably the Amazon, which is still in peril, but that's more of an aside here. A temperate rainforest is a forest that gets a lot of rain, but it's in a temperate biome, temperate ecosystem. Rainforest just really has to do with the amount of rain a specific forest gets, and then the designation temperate, tropical, whatever has to do with the particular biome it's in. Let's see, where was I? Tongass National Forest could cover Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. Its vast landscape of centuries-old cedar, hemlock, and Sitka spruce trees absorbs a significant amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and scientists have long identified Tongass as a key habitat for a range of animal species, per the Washington Post. Juliet Eilperin. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry. About 9.3 million acres of Tongass National Forest were protected under the roadless rule enacted by former President Bill Clinton. For the last 2 years, lawmakers have sought to exempt it from the rule, despite pushback from conservation groups and public comments that overwhelmingly favored keeping the rule in place, Eric Stone reports for KTOO Public Media. While tropical rainforests are the lungs of the planet, the Tongass is the lungs of North America, says Dominic Della Sala, chief scientist with the Earth Island Institute's Wild Heritage Project, to the Washington Post. It's America's last climate sanctuary. Former President Theodore Roosevelt established Tongass National Forest by executive order in 1907, and Congress affirmed the decision with legislation in 1909. The forest has the densest population of brown bears in the U.S. per the Washington Post, and the largest known concentration of bald eagles, Cassidy Randall reports for The Guardian. Tongass is also home to Sitka black-tailed deer, mountain goats, and a subspecies of timber wolf called the Alexander archipelago wolf. Some of Tongass's trees are between 300 and 1,000 years old. 1/5 of the forest was already designated for commercial development, and 1/3 was protected as a national wilderness area. Much of the undeveloped land in Tongass is rock, ice, or muskeg, a type of cold climate swamp. Now, swamps and wetlands in general are very sensitive ecosystems, and they're also very much threatened by human encroachment, pollution, things like that in general, especially since a lot of them tend to border things like the coast that are in peril for flooding thanks to climate change. The final rule will make an additional 188,000 forested acres available for timber harvest, with the majority categorized as old growth timber, according to the Forest Service rule in the Federal Register. The USDA said in a notice on Wednesday that the policy changes for Tongass can be made without major adverse impacts to the recreation, tourism, and fishing industries, while providing benefits to timber and mining industries, increasing opportunities for community infrastructure, and eliminating unnecessary regulations, per the Associated Press. I would like to really emphasize that statement there. Notice how this ruling literally only benefits things that are going to ultimately harm the ecosystem and harm the environment. I mean, I guess not necessarily responsible recreation, ecotourism, and responsible fishing practices, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're talking about the destruction of this old growth forest because people would like to log the area. But let's finish up the last few sentences here and talk a little bit more about my thoughts and a particular tweet that kind of pissed me off. So, as you can probably see, I'm full of rage, and that's what's fueling this, along with caffeine. The roadless rule had banned road construction and timber harvesting in designated parts of Tongass National Forest. The rule not only preserved wilderness areas, but also saved the country the cost of servicing a complex system of remote roads, says project director of the Pew Charitable Trust, Ken Rate, to The Guardian. Nearly 96% of comments submitted during the U.S. Forest Service review period opposed the exemption. And 2 weeks ago, all 5 Alaska Native tribal nations withdrew from their role as cooperating agencies, reports KTOO. The decision to roll back the roadless rule on the Tongass was made in spite of, not in support of, Southeast Alaskans and our communities, says Meredith Trainer, executive director of the Southeast Alaska Conservation Council, to the Associated Press. The USDA has not yet approved any specific work in the newly opened areas of Tongass National Forest, reports the Associated Press, and any proposed projects will need to comply with federal environmental review. So, the thing is, despite the fact that as of right now, development is not happening, blah, 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 all that shit that's going to be pointed out to me in the comments, I'm sure. Despite that, this sets a very unnerving precedent as far as conservation, ecology, wildlife management, and protections go. And that is concerning, especially since the current administration and Trump tries to say that they are the most environmentally responsible and blah, blah, blah. Learn how to pronounce Yosemite first before you go on that train. But that's me nitpicking. And I believe as leader of a nation that has Yosemite within it, you should at least learn how to pronounce the names of the national parks you're going to talk about. But I digress. So the thing is, there are so many comments in opposition to this exemption that it's unnerving. And I mean, really, environmental regulation, that's laughable. Under the Trump administration, environmental regulation doesn't exist anymore. No matter what people try to say, yeah, that one act that was signed in to add funds to the national parks, BLM, whatever, that was all tied to fossil fuels. And while I do support that funding being there, I don't support fossil fuels being the source of the funding. But this ruling, it's opening up something that's very concerning. One, these ecosystems in the Alaska area, these Arctic ecosystems, are they're susceptible to never bouncing back from these changes that are taking place because of climate change. They are vulnerable, and there's no reason to be logging these old growth forests. And this is a similar thing that we've been seeing with loggers getting angry in places like, I believe, Oregon and Washington, wanting to log in protected areas and throwing their temper tantrums because they can't. But one of the arguments that I see in favor of this being opened up, let's see if I can find my screenshot here, which I am not prepared. I should have had that pulled up like a responsible content creator, but I did not because it's been a long week, yo. And so this tweet right here, this person whose name I have blacked out for privacy reasons just said fire prevention, and another person responded, I saw this earlier and cried, but I thought the same thing. The Arctic is changing and we will need to have fire breaks, otherwise we'll lose even more precious wilderness habitats to fire. While I do not disagree that fire threats and fire is devastating larger parts of Alaska and Canada and these northern areas, if you look at how climate change affects wildfire video, I will link that down below. It is true, wildfire is becoming a problem in these Arctic and subarctic regions like we've never seen before. This ruling and exemption is not to provide a fire break. It's literally to pander to these corporations that want to log and mine on our very vulnerable public lands and are annoyed that these wilderness areas and protections exist. This is akin to what we're seeing with the Trump administration opening the Arctic to oil drilling. This is akin to the proposals to open up areas of the Grand Canyon overreaching area to, I believe it was uranium mining. And that is a very contested thing. Towards the beginning of the Trump administration, there were whispers of the idea of opening parts of the Yosemite and Sequoia areas to logging as well. And the fact that this exemption has been made in an area that already doesn't have roads and things, and the reason why it was been so easy to protect it, because there are no roads. Like, that roadless rule exists for a reason. This is going to open up a precedent to possibly destroy other protected areas that should remain protected. Now, as of right now, as of the time this video is going up, the election has not happened. We don't know if Trump or Biden will win. And I assure you that if Trump wins, we're gonna see more blatant destruction of our environmental protections and our wilderness areas. And what the hell are we gonna do as that happens? This article is presented and it's not something that's going to be talked about in this mainstream media right now. And that baffles my mind that this destruction is happening and it's kind of going unnoticed. But this is just a thing that we definitely have to consider at the polls. Now, while truthfully, I do not know what's going to happen if Biden wins, this is something to consider. While I don't think that Biden not supporting the Green New Deal is a good thing, I do personally think that we need the Green New Deal, but that's not what this video is about. We do need to consider, for anyone that gives a damn about the environment, about wilderness, for anyone who's a member of any kind of community that enjoys getting out there in the wilderness, whether you're a hiker, camper, backpacker, trail rider, fisherman, hunter, this is something to consider. And I do hope that if you haven't already voted, I personally voted early, if you're still like kind of hemming and hawing over things, if you care about the environment, if you care about these wilderness areas and protections in place, really think long and hard about what this administration has really been doing to our environmental protections. So moving on here, and this I assure you is 100% relevant because an article posted by NPR, gray wolves to be removed from the endangered species list. So we're not going to read this whole article together today. It is a very short article, but I plan on making a video just talking about gray wolf conservation specifically in the contiguous United States because that is a fascinating topic. And it's also a very contested topic depending on where you fall on that spectrum of wolf loving or lack thereof. The point of this article is basically that wolves are being removed from the federal endangered species list of the United States because they have been considered to have bounced back during this recovery effort, and the gray wolf has exceeded all conservation goals for recovery, according to the Interior Secretary. The Interior Secretary was appointed by a man who has been actively trying to pander to a base by breaking down protections for the environment, for endangered species. By the way, bald eagles are also no longer protected by the Endangered Species Act. And while it has been pointed out to me on Twitter because we all know how lovely Twitter is, that according to like the Department of the Interior website, I believe, there is still protections for, I think it was the next 5 years for gray wolves. That is a slap into the face for every conservationist who has ever worked on this project. While, yes, I do acknowledge that according to the IUCN Red List, gray wolves are globally considered least threatened or of least concern, it doesn't mean that in parts of their range, they're not still endangered. Now, just having, I think the number that keeps getting thrown around is 600 individuals. or not 600, excuse me, 6,000 individuals thrown around. That is not necessarily a stable population, especially when you take into account that where the wolves are currently living is not even close to the entirety of their historic range. And we will get more in depth into that when I do a deep dive into the gray wolf thing in the very near future. But like, this is another one where my interactions on Twitter are a little infuriating. One comment in particular that really made me angry was this one right here. They're just going off the federal endangered list. The states that's still worried about their population can keep them on the state's list. Now my response, and there's no reason for them to go off the federal list at this time. This was responded to by someone else that just posted an article. The webpage is misleading because it's implying the Trump administration is giving them protections that they didn't already have, which is inaccurate. The Trump administration is stripping wolves of protections while saying that they'll just have different protections for the next 5 years, then it'll be up to the states, essentially. Now, I'll get more in depth in that and do a little more research into that before my next video, as what I said might be a little bit of a gloss over because I didn't deep dive into it, like I said. But of course, I just want to show you this brief interaction. Now you'll notice this other name is blurred out in a different color because this was a different person than the one I originally responded to. The original person didn't respond to this particular thread until later today, and their comment was a bit asinine, basically pointing out that globally they're not an endangered species, which we already talked about. You remember that just a couple minutes ago, I'm sure. But of course, my response to them just posting a link to the Department of Interior webpage, which is, you know, the best way to have a conversation, just posting a link, was even if they are continuing protections, wolves should not be taken off the endangered species list. Their populations are not in the stable range, and 5 more years of protection is a slap in the face to conservation efforts, which I stand by that comment, and you can come at me if you disagree. Their response, so what is the ideal population? Who determines that? What does greatly exceeding the combined recovery goals mean? Trump isn't the one pulling the plug, as much as you would enjoy being angry about that. First of all, I never mentioned Trump in any of my comments up to this point. So thank you, random internet asshole, for putting words into my mouth and just assuming things that you really should not have if you're trying to have an honest fucking discussion. So my response, I never said that Trump is the one pulling the plug, but his administration and name is associated with the move. Greatly exceeding ... is an arbitrary phrase to calm the conservationists who understand that in the world of ecology, exceeding goals does not mean stable populations. And frankly, it's more nuanced than what this person is trying to make it sound like. And that is very frustrating to me. I have experience in ecology and conservation. That is literally what I study, and it's very frustrating seeing these arguments being made. And you're kind of arguing in an echo chamber because these people don't give a fuck. They just want to say their same shit. And then, of course, their response was a Business Insider article. Trump had nothing to do with it, and Obama wanted to do it back in 2013. Oh my God, thank you for just devolving into whataboutism here. The fact that the Obama administration proposed removing wolves from the endangered species list in 2013 has fucking zero to do with what the Trump administration actively is doing. It doesn't matter. Now, first of all, I get that this person is just assuming my political leanings. By the way, vote blue no matter who right now, Blue Wave 2020. So, I mean, I guess they're correct, but I was vehemently opposed to that in 2013 when the Obama administration proposed it, and that doesn't change the fact that I'm vehemently opposed to it now. I don't care who the hell is proposing this. Bernie fucking Sanders could propose it and I would still be against it. So first of all, this person is just assuming that the only reason I'm against this is because it's the Trump administration and I want to hate on Trump and blah, blah, blah. I mean, who the fuck doesn't want to hate on Trump? He's easy to hate on. But that has nothing to do with it, and I have not invoked Trump's name except for one comment to another person somewhere else under this article on Twitter. They asked, why would the Trump administration even be pushing this right now? Why, like, something along those lines. I was like, well, one possible reason is because in the areas where wolves are present, there's a large proportion of ranchers that would that have been historically pushing ever since they were reintroduced for extermination. And that would possibly give Trump more favor in the polls. That's it. Which is true, by the way. And we'll get into that more later. But my response to that was just a previous administration proposing it, which I never denied, by the way, does not change the fact that it is the current administration that did remove them from the endangered species list, which is something that should not happen given the conservation point the species is at. So, I mean, at this point, that's pretty much, I don't think that particular person's gonna respond anymore, nor do I care. I've pretty much finished with them. I don't know. The other one is just the other person who basically says because globally they're least threatened means that they shouldn't be on any endangered species list anywhere, which is asinine and a gross misunderstanding of how species are classified as endangered, threatened, whatever. And it's confusing, and it does sometimes go on population level, because they just keep saying it should be up to the states. And the reason it should not be up to the states is because the states where the wolves are the states that want them exterminated. And that is a little bit of a generalization on my part. I admit that, but that is overwhelmingly the sentiment in those areas. And the point is, these are two attacks on the environment and ecosystems by the Trump administration right now. Yes, I understand the Cheeto-in-chief is not the one saying, fuck wolves and fuck the forest. It's his administration. It doesn't change the fact that it's still his name associated with it. So back to the voting thing. While I agree that the Democrats have been just as deplorable in some ways as far as environmental policy goes and climate change goes. There's going to be much more damage done by another Trump term. And I do genuinely hope that when you go to fill out your ballot, you take a long, hard look at it and really consider what you're voting for. Because if you care about the environment, if you care about climate change, which is in fact an existential threat to human society, no matter where you are, if you care about human rights, if you care about healthcare, including access to birth control and abortion, which is not murder, then you seriously should vote blue down the ticket. And normally I would not advocate for that. Normally I would not like to identify with the Democrats, but this is not the election cycle to make a symbolic vote. That's all I really have to say here. The United States is sitting on a precipice, and we can so easily fall down and end up somewhere at the bottom of a cliff where we don't even have an idea of what is between the rocks at the bottom. So really think about it when you vote. If you haven't voted early already, I genuinely hope that you take a minute and consider what you're marking down on that ticket. So next week we should be back to a regularly scheduled Serpent Sunday. I just had things to say this week and it's my channel, so what I say goes. This is not a democracy here over on the Reptile Goth YouTube channel. Sorry. But I do encourage, if you don't follow me on Twitter, please do, because a lot of times I get into these arguments and it is amusing for people who are not me to watch that happen, I am told. And I know that I do have some loved ones that do watch these videos that are going to be upset that I'm advocating for the hashtag Blue Wave 2020, vote Biden, all that stuff. And all I have to say to you guys is, I love you, your family, but I strongly disagree with your choices, and I do think that you're voting for a racist, immoral monster. So, without further ado, have a wonderful rest of your fucking Sunday. I will see you next time. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane B. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.